You've always known there was something more. Even as a child you could feel it, like a whisper beneath the noise of the world. Something ancient, something forgotten, a presence watching, not from outside, but from deep within you. And that feeling? It wasn't your imagination. It was your third eye, calling to be remembered. They don't teach you about this in school. You won't hear it on the evening news. Because the truth about the third eye isn't just mysterious, it's dangerous, not because it harms you, but because it frees you. And a free mind, one that sees clearly, is the greatest threat to any system built on control. The ancients knew this. Long before electricity, long before telescopes or satellites, they saw reality not through lenses or screens, but through inner vision. They saw with the eye behind the eyes, the all-seeing eye that never sleeps. The Egyptians called it the Eye of Horus. The Hindus called it Ajna. In esoteric circles it's been known as the gateway to the divine, the seat of intuition, the portal to hidden realms. But you right now may not realize that this eye isn't just a symbol. It's real. It exists in your body, right now, inside your brain, the pineal gland, a small pine-cone-shaped organ, nestled in the center of your skull. And while science has labeled it a regulator of sleep, ancient mystics knew better. They revered it as the antenna of the soul, the place where heaven touches earth, the organ of spiritual perception. This gland is photosensitive. It reacts to light, even though it lies in darkness. It produces melatonin, governing your sleep and circadian rhythms. But it also produces DMT, the molecule some call the spirit molecule, a chemical responsible for the most profound mystical experiences ever recorded. The visions, the out-of-body journeys, the sense of merging with infinite intelligence, all of it tied to this tiny gland in the center of your brain. And what do they do to it? They flood it with fluoride, they bombard it with toxins, they distract you with noise, with lights, with fear. Because an awakened pineal gland cannot be enslaved, it sees too clearly. It sees through the illusion. But let's go deeper. Why did ancient temples mimic the structure of the human brain? Why are there pine cone symbols on the staff of the Pope, in Egyptian carvings and outside the Vatican itself? Why does the pyramid, a structure with a radiant eye hovering above it, sit on the back of the US dollar bill? Because they know, they've always known. The eye is power, and the ones who hold that power don't want you to find yours. But here's the secret. They can't take it from you, not really, because it's yours by divine birthright. You don't have to be a monk. You don't need to live in a cave. You don't even have to believe in anything. All you need is to remember. Remember that you are not just a body. You are a soul having a human experience. And the third eye is the bridge between those two truths. It's the part of you that can feel someone's energy before they speak, the part of you that dreams in symbols and wakes up with knowing, the part of you that gets chills when you hear ancient wisdom, not because it's new, but because it's familiar. When the third eye opens, everything changes. You begin to see patterns others miss. You sense when something isn't true, even if the whole world believes it. You start noticing synchronicities, those strange, perfect coincidences that line up like breadcrumbs from the universe. You become the observer, and from that place you're no longer trapped in the drama, you're no longer fooled by appearances. You can see the deeper current, the invisible hand moving beneath the surface of your life. That is your power. That is what they don't want you to access. But here's what most people don't realize. Opening the third eye is not about force. It's not about control. It's about surrender. You don't make it open. You allow it. You clear away the blocks. You create space. And then, like a flower unfolding to the sun, it reveals itself. This is why silence is so powerful. Meditation, breathwork, darkness, stillness. All of these are sacred invitations for the third eye to awaken. In ancient temples, initiates would be led into pitch-black chambers for days, even weeks, until the veil between the physical and the spiritual began to thin. In that silence, the mind would quiet, the senses would dull, and the vision, the true vision, would emerge. You don't need to lock yourself in a cave, but you do need to unplug. You need to detox. Not just your body, but your mind, your emotions, your beliefs. You've been programmed to ignore your inner vision, to dismiss it as fantasy. But the truth is, the third eye doesn't show you hallucinations. It shows you what's really there. When the veil lifts, you begin to see energy. You feel truth in your bones. You understand without explanation. And in that state, you're no longer blind in a world full of illusion. You become awake in a world that is dreaming. And the dream is ready to end. You've seen it before, even if you didn't recognize what it was. In ancient tombs, carved into stone walls, painted on papyrus scrolls, etched into jewelry and obelisks. An eye, sometimes fierce, sometimes radiant, always watching, always centered. This is the Eye of Horus. In Egyptian mythology, it wasn't just a decorative symbol, it was sacred geometry incarnate, a powerful emblem of healing, protection, and divine insight. But beyond its mythic story of being torn and restored in a cosmic battle, the Eye of Horus encoded something else: mathematics. Every part of the symbol represents a specific fraction, mapping out the senses: sight, smell, thought, taste, touch, hearing, and yet it adds up to less than one. Why? Because the final part, the part you can't see, is intuition. The Egyptians were telling you something. They were saying that your physical senses are powerful, yes, but incomplete. Without the inner eye, without the unseen sense, you are not whole. And the part of you that completes this circle is your third eye. Travel east and you'll hear it called Ajna, the sixth chakra, the command center. Nestled between the brows, it's not just a metaphor. It's a vortex, a spiritual receiver, a lens that doesn't look out, but looks through. In yogic philosophy, this chakra governs intuition, imagination, psychic abilities, and divine sight. When energy flows freely through the ajna, you're not guessing your way through life. You're guided. And this guidance doesn't come from logic. It comes from vision. Clear, multidimensional, soul-born vision. And it doesn't stop there. In Christian mysticism and Hermetic philosophy, this same eye emerges again, this time crowned in light, hovering above the pyramid. The all-seeing eye. It's engraved in cathedrals, drawn into grimoires, and, yes, emblazoned on the back of your dollar bill. They call it the Eye of Providence, the Eye of Divine Insight. But few ever ask why it's atop a pyramid, or why it's always detached, floating, disembodied, watching. That pyramid is not just architecture, it's a spiritual metaphor, a symbol of ascension, of climbing toward higher awareness. The base represents the material world, the wide, heavy foundation of physical experience. But as you ascend, the world narrows, it simplifies, it clarifies, until finally at the very top there is only one point, one peak, one eye. That is the third eye. The fact that it floats above the pyramid, that's no accident. It means it is above the system. It sees beyond the material. It is not bound by the base. That symbol has been used by secret societies, mystics, and governments alike. But its original meaning had nothing to do with surveillance. It had everything to do with divine perception. This is where sacred geometry begins to whisper secrets. The spiral of the Fibonacci sequence, the ratio of the golden mean, the structure of a pine cone, all echo the architecture of your inner sight. And it's no coincidence that the pine cone, one of nature's most powerful fractal shapes, became a sacred emblem. Look closer: the staff of Osiris, the rod of Dionysus, the Vatican's massive bronze pine cone statue, all of them pointing to the pineal gland, your third eye's throne. The pine cone is nature's fingerprint for enlightenment. It spirals outward in perfect, ordered chaos. It captures light, it defies straight lines, it echoes the galaxy and the atom, and within your brain the pineal gland mirrors that same sacred pattern. So why is this hidden? Why are these symbols scattered across the world like puzzle pieces never taught together? Because the moment you see the connection, the illusion starts to crack. You begin to realize that every culture wasn't just guessing, they were remembering. Remembering a time when humanity knew, when we understood that we are more than flesh and bone, that consciousness is not created by the brain, it's channeled through it, that the third eye is not just folklore, it's hardware, biological, energetic, celestial. Even the Renaissance, in its obsession with divine proportion, buried clues into art. Leonardo da Vinci sketched the Vitruvian Man in perfect symmetry, but what lies right at the midpoint of that drawing, between the eyebrows, intersecting the axis of balance? The third eye. Michelangelo painted God touching Adam's finger in the Sistine Chapel, but zoom out and the structure surrounding God, it's the shape of a human brain. The divine reaching through mind. The artist encoding the message. The kingdom of heaven is not above, it is within. This knowledge has always been there, hiding in plain sight. In Tibetan Buddhism, the eye of wisdom gazes from the center of Thankats. In Taoist alchemy, practitioners meditate on the upper dantian, the seat of insight behind the brow. In Mayan carvings, the serpent of knowledge ascends toward the forehead. The serpent, the spiral, the eye, the pinecone, the flame, all speaking the same language, awaken. But we forgot. We traded vision for screens, intuition for opinion, inner truth for external noise, and the symbols became decorations, the rituals became empty, the wisdom became myth. But you're not here for myths. You're here because something inside you remembers, because you've seen these symbols before and something in you stirred. You didn't know why, but now you do. It was your third eye, responding to ancient echoes, whispering that the door is still there, that the key is still in your hands. This isn't superstition, this is a spiritual technology, one that predates language, borders, and dogma, a way of seeing that does not depend on physical sight, a vision that reveals energy, intention, vibration, one that can't be faked. Because when it opens, you know. You know who is lying and who is telling the truth. You know what your next step is, even when it makes no sense to others. You can feel when something is sacred, and when something is being used to distract. That is why the third eye has been revered, encoded, and protected, and that is why it has been hidden, ridiculed, and attacked. Because when you see with it, you cannot be controlled. Inside the center of your brain, nestled between the two hemispheres, lies a mysterious little gland, tiny, cone-shaped, and quietly pulsing with power. You've likely never felt it, never seen it, never thought twice about it. And yet this organ has been called the seat of the soul, the gateway to other dimensions, and the bridge between matter and spirit. It's called the pineal gland, and it's not a myth. It's real, measurable, anatomically verified. Every person has one, including you. Only about the size of a grain of rice. The pineal gland sits in the epithalamus, right at the geometric center of your brain. But unlike any other part of the body, it doesn't receive signals in the usual way. It's not fed information through sensory input. It responds directly to light. Let that sink in. An organ inside your brain that can perceive light. This gland has photoreceptors, cells that respond to illumination. In fact, for years scientists puzzled over why the pineal gland looked so much like a primitive eye, because under the microscope it has rods and cones, just like your retina. Ancient wisdom always said the third eye could see. Modern science has just been catching up. The pineal gland produces melatonin, a hormone that regulates your sleep-wake cycle. When the sun sets and your environment grows dark, your pineal activates, releasing melatonin and lulling your body into rest and recovery. But melatonin is more than just a sleep aid. It's a powerful antioxidant, a regulator of your internal clock. a guardian of your body's circadian rhythm. But that's just the surface. In deeper states, like during birth, death, deep meditation, or trauma, the pineal gland is believed to release trace amounts of DMT, dimethyltryptamine. Known to some as the spirit molecule, DMT is one of the most potent psychedelics ever discovered. But here's the mystery. It's already inside you. You are by nature a chemical portal to mystical experience. When DMT is active in the brain, users report visions of otherworldly realms, geometric patterns, angelic beings, life reviews, feelings of unity with all existence. The same descriptions emerge from ancient mystics, near-death survivors, and spiritual adepts. They are not hallucinating. They are seeing, just not with their physical eyes. They are seeing with the third eye. The pineal gland acts like an internal lens, focusing not on physical light but on spiritual light, subtle light, information encoded in frequency and energy. And that's not fantasy. That's quantum physics. Your brain is not a closed box. It's a transmitter and a receiver, and the pineal gland is the antenna. It interfaces with fields of consciousness beyond the veil, not because it's supernatural, but because it's natural and forgotten. Ancient civilizations knew this. How could the Egyptians describe the function of the third eye so precisely, thousands of years before neurology existed? Why does the eye of Horus map perfectly onto the cross-section of the human brain, down to the thalamus, corpus callosum, and pineal gland? Why did Indian sages place the Ajna chakra exactly where the pineal rests? Why did mystery schools teach breath retention, fasting, and prolonged darkness? Because they weren't just experimenting with beliefs, they were activating biology. They knew that the body is a temple, and deep within the inner sanctum, where no light shines, dwells the pineal, the holy of holies. And yet, in modern life, that temple has been desecrated. You may not know this, but your pineal gland is under attack. Over time, through diet, environment, and exposure, the pineal begins to harden, not metaphorically, literally. It calcifies. Tiny crystals of calcium phosphate build up in the tissue like plaque in an artery. This calcification dulls its sensitivity. It disrupts melatonin. It closes the gateway. And one of the greatest culprits, fluoride? That's right. The same chemical added to your water, your toothpaste, your municipal supply in the name of dental health accumulates in the pineal gland more than any other part of the body. Studies have shown that fluoride binds with calcium, accelerating the gland's calcification. It turns your spiritual antenna into stone, and the result? You become disconnected, numb, spiritually blind. Now ask yourself, why would something that numbs your perception be slipped quietly into your daily life? It's not a conspiracy, it's conditioning. Because when the third eye is closed, you stop questioning, you stop sensing, you forget that you are energy, not just matter. You forget that you are divine, and it's not just fluoride, it's artificial food, endless screen exposure, media overstimulation, trauma, fear, stress, all of it distorts the signal, and the world becomes very convincing. You begin to believe that only what you can touch is real, that intuition is superstition, that imagination is childish, that seeing energy is delusion. You become hypnotized by the five senses, and the sixth sense, the third eye, goes dark. But here's the truth. The darkness is not death. It's dormancy. The third eye can wake up, and when it does, your life begins to shimmer with awareness. Your dreams become lucid. Your meditations go deeper. You begin to sense energies in rooms, behind conversations, beneath decisions. You spot the patterns in your life. You connect the dots others miss. You move from reaction to awareness. You don't just see the world, you read it. And it begins with detox, purifying your inner temple, removing what dulls the light. Switch to spring water. Eliminate fluoride. Clean your diet. embrace stillness, meditate. Sun gaze safely at dawn and dusk, practice breathwork, rest in silence. Every act of purification is a prayer to the I within. Because when the pineal gland begins to decalcify, it doesn't just function better biologically, it begins to awaken spiritually. And the bridge between the physical and metaphysical becomes strong again. You don't need to ingest anything. You don't need to join a cult. You don't need to follow dogma. Your third eye doesn't require belief. It requires attention. Because it's not a belief, it's a reality. One that's been with you since before you were born. And now, it's ready to open. Opening the third eye isn't just a biological event. It's a rite of passage, a sacred return to who you really are. And for thousands of years, this awakening wasn't random. It was initiated. You weren't simply told about truth. You were led into it. You were prepared, cleansed, stripped of illusion. And then when the body was still, the mind was quiet, and the ego lay disarmed, you were shown. That's what the ancients knew. In Egypt, initiates didn't just read scrolls. They walked through temples designed like spiritual maps. Each chamber aligned with chakras, each symbol placed with intention. You didn't just learn in these temples, you were transformed. The Temple of Luxor, for example, isn't just an architectural wonder. It's a blueprint of the human body. As you walk through it, you move from the feet to the crown, culminating at the sanctum sanctorum, the pineal chamber, the third eye. And before you entered that inner sanctum, you had to be purified. You fasted, you sat in silence, you faced your fears, you walked through darkness, and in that darkness came the light. In the Vedic traditions of India, the path was similar. Yogis didn't stumble upon enlightenment, they disciplined themselves into it. The practice of dhyana, deep meditation, wasn't just about stress relief. It was about activating the Ajna chakra, the seat of inner knowing. You sat cross-legged not to appear spiritual, but to align your spine like an antenna. You breathed in certain rhythms, not just for health, but to raise kundalini, the coiled serpent energy waiting at the base of your spine. That serpent, kundalini, was the spark, the fire, the sacred voltage that once awakened ascended through your chakras, lighting each one like a candle until it reached the third eye and burst through the crown. And when it did, the world you once knew disappeared. Gnostics called this gnosis, not belief, but direct knowing, not stories passed down, but light that rises up. They taught that the divine didn't live in temples or texts, it lived inside you. And the key to unlocking it wasn't worship, it was initiation. But to be initiated, you had to let something die. Because the third eye doesn't open to who you pretend to be, it opens to who you truly are. And that means facing the illusion you've built around yourself, the roles, the masks, the ego. This is why every real initiation is a kind of death before dying. You are brought to the edge. Not physically, but spiritually. You are stripped of your name, your history, your identity. You are confronted by silence so deep that your thoughts have nowhere to hide. And in that silence, you don't find a monster. You find a mirror. You are forced to see the truth about yourself, about the world, about the story you've been telling. And when that story falls apart, something else appears. This is why sound has always played such a sacred role in initiation. Not music for entertainment, but sacred sound. Resonance, vibration. Om, the primordial sound of creation, was not a chant to repeat mindlessly. It was a frequency to align with. When you chant Om, you're not just making a sound. You're activating your cells. You're vibrating your pineal gland. You're striking a chord in the deepest layers of your being. Modern science now confirms that sound can affect brainwaves, that binaural beats, two tones of slightly different frequencies played in each ear, can bring you into theta state, the same brainwave state associated with hypnosis, deep meditation, dreaming, altered perception. In the mystery schools, this wasn't theory, it was practice. Light was another tool, not just visual light, but inner light. Initiates would spend days in complete darkness, fasting and meditating until the pineal began to secrete light-activated neurochemicals on its own. And then, when a flicker of light was introduced or a sacred symbol revealed, it would be received not just through the eyes, but through vision. The eye inside would begin to see. Breathwork was the ignition. Through rhythmic breathing retention, release, rapid inhalation, initiates' bodies became conduits for energy. You see, breath is spirit. It's life force. In Hebrew, ruach. In Sanskrit, prana. In Latin, spiritus. The breath and the soul have always been one. And when you breathe consciously, you're not just moving air. You're circulating energy. You're creating space. You're clearing the fog. And in that clarity, the third eye opens naturally, effortlessly. But here's the truth. Not everyone makes it through initiation. Because the process is intense, it forces you to meet your shadows. It brings suppressed pain to the surface. It dissolves everything that isn't real. And that can feel like madness, until you realize it's actually sanity returning. Kundalini energy is sacred, but it is not tame. When it rises, it purifies. It shakes loose the debris in your system. It burns through falsehood. It brings your traumas to light, not to harm you, but to heal you. This is why initiation has always been guided by elders, teachers, mystics who have walked the path and returned with maps. And yet, you don't need a temple. You don't need a master in robes. The guide you're looking for is already within you. The soul always knows the way home. So the question isn't whether the third eye can be awakened, it's whether you're willing to surrender to the process. To breathe when it hurts. To sit in the silence. To feel what you've buried. To die, not in body, but in identity. Because when the ego cracks, the light pours in. And what you see then isn't fantasy. It's truth. Raw, undeniable, infinite. You see yourself beyond form. You see time unraveling. You see others not as bodies, but as light. You perceive without trying. You know without needing to ask. And once the third eye opens, it never closes in quite the same way. You are initiated. Not by a guru, not by a priest, not by an institution, but by the divine. Within you, there is a current running through you right now, a sacred river of energy that flows not through your veins, but through your soul. It's not measured by stethoscopes or blood pressure cuffs. It's felt, known, moved by breath, by attention, by intention. This is the subtle body, the energetic system that ancient traditions have mapped for millennia. At the heart of this system are 7 primary chakras, spinning wheels of energy aligned with your spine. Each one acts like a transformer, translating universal energy into specific human experiences. From survival to sexuality, from power to compassion, from expression to vision to union. But 2 of these centers are most directly tied to the awakening of the third eye. The Ajna chakra, located between your eyebrows, and the Sahasrara, or crown chakra, located just above the top of your head. Ajna is your command center. The name itself means to perceive, or to direct. It's here that intuition lives, not guesswork, not hunches, clarity. You don't think here, you know. When the ajna is open, your inner and outer worlds sync. You begin to trust your insights. You see beneath the surface. You understand people's energy, their hidden motivations, even the words they don't say. You connect with guidance that feels like it's coming from somewhere higher, but also deeper. Sahasrara, the crown chakra, is the gateway to that higher consciousness. It's not about information, it's about communion. The feeling of being connected to everything, the moment where you dissolve into the field of infinite light. Together, these 2 chakras form a cosmic axis, vision and union. insight, and surrender. But what bridges them? Kundalini. Kundalini is not a concept. It's not a metaphor. It's a force. A coiled serpent at the base of your spine, dormant in most, but divine in all. When Kundalini awakens, it doesn't rise like a thought. It rises like fire, like liquid light, dancing up your spinal column, piercing, activating, and purifying each chakra as it ascends. As it reaches Ajna, the third eye bursts open, not slowly, not politely, but with the unmistakable force of revelation. And when it reaches Sahasra, you merge with the all. But this journey is not always smooth. The chakras must be clear for Kundalini to rise safely when energy centers are blocked by trauma, fear, repression, guilt. Kundalini's rise becomes turbulent. You may feel sudden surges of energy, pressure in the head, emotional overwhelm, sleep disruptions, waves of ecstasy followed by moments of darkness. This is not dysfunction. This is purification. Think of it like a river hitting a dam. The water wants to flow, but something old, something heavy is in the way. That something could be anything you've buried, a past wound, a limiting belief, a false identity. The blocks aren't flaws, they're forgotten energies, waiting to be felt, healed, released. And this is why vibrational healing becomes so important, because everything is vibration. Your chakras, they spin to specific frequencies. Your organs, they resonate with distinct tones. Your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, they're all patterns of energy. Sound can realign them. Mantras like Om, frequencies like 528 Hz, binaural beats, all can break up energetic congestion like tuning forks recalibrating the soul. So can crystals, meditation, breathwork, movement, stillness, purity. Because the key to awakening the third eye isn't forcing energy. It's aligning it, and alignment begins with stillness. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of awareness, a conscious pause, a quieting of the inner storm, a moment where you stop chasing and start listening. In that stillness, the chakras speak. You feel where energy is stuck. You breathe into it. You allow the tension to unwind, and slowly the system begins to harmonize. The current begins to rise. And when the river of Kundalini flows freely, when the chakras are lit like candles on a sacred path, your third eye doesn't just open, it blossoms. You begin to see what you are made of. Light. You realize the voice you've always trusted wasn't imagination, it was guidance. You begin to live in resonance, choosing foods, thoughts, environments, relationships that match your higher frequency. You stop looking for signs and start becoming one. You walk into rooms and shift energy just by being there. You feel truth in your cells. You catch distortions like static in a song. You become magnetic, not through effort but through coherence. Because your system is no longer chaotic, it's aligned. Your inner world is humming at a frequency that the universe can't ignore. But this isn't about perfection, it's about purity. Purity doesn't mean never feeling low. It means not clinging to distortion. It means letting energy pass instead of holding it hostage. It means becoming a clear channel, and when you are clear, divine vision flows effortlessly. You don't have to try to see. You just see. You become the seer, the knower, the witness. Not because you've achieved something rare, but because you've remembered something eternal. That you are energy, you are vibration, you are consciousness itself. And the third eye was never closed. It was only waiting for you to look within. If the third eye grants you the power to see beyond illusion, then it makes sense that those invested in illusion would do everything they can to shut it down. And they have. You weren't born blind, you were born with inner sight. But slowly, over time, systematically, strategically, that vision was dulled, not by accident, not by nature, but by design. They began with your water, fluoride. You've heard the word. You've been told it's good for your teeth. But what they didn't tell you is that it accumulates in the one part of your body built for spiritual perception, the pineal gland. It doesn't just pass through you. It collects, it calcifies, it turns your third eye to stone. And once it's hardened, your ability to receive higher frequencies begins to fade. Your dreams dull, your intuition quiets, your sense of the mystical dissolves into the mundane, all while being told it's for your health. But it doesn't stop with what you drink. Look around you, the lights, the screens, the endless flickering blue glow of artificial life. It may seem harmless, convenient, but it's a new form of blindness. Natural light, the light of the sun, carries coded information. It awakens your cells. It charges your DNA. It syncs your circadian rhythms. But artificial light, it distorts them. Your pineal gland relies on the dark to secrete melatonin. It needs stillness, silence, rhythm. But if you're bathed in screens all day and night, your gland becomes confused. Your body forgets when to rest. Your mind forgets how to be still. Your spirit forgets how to rise. They call it entertainment, but it's hypnosis. Flashing images, subliminal messages, emotional manipulation disguised as news. These are not isolated glitches. They are engineered frequencies, crafted to keep your mind distracted, your nervous system overloaded, and your third eye asleep. And then there's the way you were taught. Not to wonder, not to dream, but to memorize, to obey, to pass the test. From the time you were a child, the education system has fed you facts, not truths, data, not wisdom, left brain logic without right brain wonder. The creative mind, the visionary mind, was dismissed as impractical. The mystical, labeled delusion. The intuitive, ignored, shamed, silenced. And in its place, standardization, rote learning, linear thinking, a system designed not to awaken your third eye but to shut it down, because a child who trusts their own vision cannot be controlled, and control is the unspoken goal. When the population is blind, they are easier to guide. When you can't see the bigger picture, you will accept the smaller cage. When you lose access to your inner truth, you become dependent on outer authority, and that's exactly what they want. Because an awakened third eye doesn't just perceive energy, it sees through lies, it senses manipulation, it detects false light, it recognizes truth not because it's proven but because it resonates, and those who rely on manipulation cannot afford to be seen. This is why so many mystics, visionaries, and spiritual scientists have been suppressed, discredited, or erased. Wilhelm Reich spoke of orgon energy, a life force that could be harnessed and measured. He was imprisoned, his work destroyed. Nikola Tesla described energy, frequency, and vibration as the keys to understanding the universe. He died isolated, his discoveries buried beneath patents and propaganda. Mystics across history, Sufi poets, Buddhist monks, Hermetic alchemists, were often driven underground, their truths too dangerous, their sight too piercing. Even now, those who speak about energy, intuition, or the third eye are often met with ridicule, as if perception beyond the five senses is something to mock. But the only thing they fear more than ridicule is remembering. Because if you remember who you are, they lose their grip. If you start to trust the knowing within you, their systems begin to collapse. If you open your third eye, you begin to see the game. And when you see the game, you no longer play it, you transcend it. So yes, there is a war on consciousness, but not the kind fought with weapons. This war is silent, psychological, frequencies instead of bullets, distractions instead of chains. And it's been waged not on your body, but on your perception. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. You can't kill consciousness. You can't erase vision. You can only suppress it. And suppressed energy always returns. The pineal gland can decalcify. The chakras can be cleared. The vision can come back online, and when it does, nothing is the same. You begin to see the manipulation not as evil, but as desperate. You begin to notice how hard they work to keep you asleep because of how powerful you are when you're awake. And that's when something incredible happens. You stop being a victim of suppression, you become a rebel of the soul. Reclaiming your third eye is not just personal, it's revolutionary. It's an act of defiance, a declaration that your truth cannot be dictated, that your reality cannot be programmed, that your sight, inner sight, is sacred, and you don't need permission to access it. All you need is remembrance, because the most powerful thing you can ever do is see. You don't need anyone to tell you when the third eye opens. You feel it. It's not a theory, not a philosophy, not a belief. It's a direct experience, alive, undeniable and sacred. Across every spiritual tradition, it's always been the same. Mystics, saints, yogis, shamans, prophets, they all speak of it, not in the language of intellect, but in the language of light. Visions, dreams, glimpses beyond the veil, bursts of divine color and sacred sound, encounters with beings of radiant presence, and most of all, a feeling that you are no longer separate, that you are not observing life, you are merging with it. Some have seen a tunnel of light, others a vast field of golden energy. Some speak of the soundless sound, an inner vibration that hums through their spine. Some cry, overwhelmed by the beauty. Some laugh, finally understanding that everything they've ever needed was within them all along. These are not hallucinations, they're not delusions, they are what every ancient culture has tried to describe using the tools they had. Different symbols, different languages, but always pointing to the same doorway, the inner eye. And the truth is, you don't have to wait for that moment to strike by accident. You can invite it, but not by force, not by ritual alone. You awaken the third eye the way you would approach a temple, with stillness, with reverence, with presence. That's why meditation has always been the master key, because when the outside world is silenced, the inner world speaks, and in that silence, the third eye doesn't just open, it remembers. You sit, you breathe, you allow, you stop seeking answers and begin receiving them, not as thoughts, but as knowing. This is what Jesus meant when he said the kingdom of heaven is within you. He wasn't speaking poetically. He was describing a state of consciousness, one accessible not through belief but through experience. Stillness is not emptiness, it's full of insight, and the more you enter that stillness, the more your inner sight sharpens. But meditation doesn't have to be complex. Start with breath. Become aware of your inhale. Follow it. Let it fill you. Then feel your exhale as it softens you. Let your awareness rest gently at the point between your eyebrows, the home of your third eye. No pressure, just presence. You can also use Trataka, a practice of candle gazing. In a dark, quiet room, light a single candle, place it at eye level, and simply stare at the flame without blinking. Let your eyes water. Let the image burn into your vision, and then close your eyes. And observe what remains. That inner glow, that radiant imprint. That's not just afterimage. That's activation. You've begun to turn your gaze inward. Visualization is another sacred tool, but not imagination for fantasy's sake. Intentional visioning. Close your eyes. Picture a violet light at the center of your brow. See it spinning, glowing, expanding. Breathe into it. Let it pulse with each inhale, shine brighter with each exhale. Let it become a flower, a star, an orb. Whatever your soul chooses, just let it become real. Because to the third eye, it is real. You can also work with sacred botanicals, nature's own allies for vision. The ancient Egyptians revered blue lotus for its gentle, euphoric and awareness-expanding qualities. It was used in ceremony, soaked in wine, steeped in tea, inhaled in incense. Other cultures turned to herbs like mugwort, Kalya Zakatechichi, or sacred Dhammayana, each with their own ability to open the dream gates, enhance clarity, or invoke subtle shifts in awareness. Of course, these tools must be approached with respect, and only used where legal and safe, because they are not shortcuts, they are amplifiers, mirrors, catalysts. They show you what is already within you, and that's the key. The third eye doesn't give you something new. It reveals what has always been hidden. It strips away the noise, the fear, the conditioning. And what's revealed is the truth of your soul. Suddenly you begin to understand your karma not as punishment, but as pattern. You see the echoes of your choices, the hidden reasons for your struggles, the purpose behind the pain. You begin to understand that life isn't happening to you, it's responding through you. And even more profound, you start to sense your soul purpose. It doesn't come as a checklist. It comes as a pull, a knowing, a deep, resonant yes that rises in your chest when you're on the right path, a quiet resistance when you're not. You stop asking, "What should I do?" and start listening to what your soul has been whispering all along. The third eye aligns you with your divine blueprint, the mission you chose before you were born, the reason you feel called to heal, to speak, to guide, to create, to remember. And in that remembrance, truth becomes simple. You no longer debate the nature of reality, you see it. You feel energy before it becomes matter. You watch intention shape form. You understand that what you focus on expands, not as an idea, but as a law of vibration. The third eye doesn't just perceive, it translates. It helps you navigate the multidimensional nature of life with grace. You begin to live as a soul, not just a name. You make choices from your core. You walk through the world not with eyes wide open, but with vision fully awakened. And once that shift happens, nothing can take it from you. Because direct experience is yours forever. It's not something you read, it's something you became. And that is what they cannot replicate, fabricate, or steal. Because the kingdom of heaven is not in the sky. It's not in a book, it's not in a temple, it's inside you. And your third eye is the door. Once your third eye opens, you don't just see the world differently, you exist in it differently. It's like stepping out of a fog you didn't know you were in. Colors seem richer, conversations carry deeper meaning. You begin to feel the energy behind words, behind actions, behind places and people. Your intuition sharpens. It stops whispering and starts speaking clearly. You just know things. You walk into a room and instantly sense what's off. You meet someone and feel the story they don't speak. You think of someone and they call. You imagine something vividly and it begins to manifest into form almost effortlessly. These aren't coincidences. They're synchronicities, signs, echoes of alignment, and when your third eye is open, they increase, not because the universe has changed, but because you've attuned to it. You're picking up signals that were always there, but now you finally have the receiver turned on. Life becomes more symbolic. Dreams become messages. Numbers repeat. Songs arrive at the exact moment you need to hear them. Even silence begins to pulse with meaning. You realize that nothing is random. Everything, every encounter, every challenge, every gift is part of your sacred curriculum. You begin to notice a break from the matrix. What used to seem normal, endless busyness, blind competition, fear-based news, shallow relationships, now feels hollow, contrived. You watch people chasing illusions, worshipping distractions, fearing the unknown, and you remember, that was once you too. But now, you see how systems are built to keep people asleep, how comfort is sold as safety, how entertainment is used to numb deeper yearning. You see how fear is marketed, how separation is engineered, how people are taught to doubt themselves and worship authority. And you no longer participate. Not from rebellion, but from clarity. You don't need to fight the illusion, you've simply outgrown it. Like waking up from a dream and realizing you don't need to argue with the characters, you just get out of bed. This is the archetypal path of the seer. First comes the awakening, the moment your third eye opens and you realize the world is not what it seemed. It's exhilarating, it's terrifying, it's liberating. You feel like you've been handed a sacred key, and in many ways you have. Then comes the integration, the phase where you begin to live what you've seen. This is where the real work begins. You must dismantle old beliefs, release outdated identities, let go of what no longer aligns. It's not always graceful. Sometimes it's lonely. Friends may not understand. The old life no longer fits. You begin to question everything: relationships, career, religion, self-worth. But through this stripping away, something new is born. You become the witness. You no longer cling to roles. You observe your thoughts, your reactions, your triggers, and slowly you begin to respond from truth, not habit. And then, slowly, you move into service. Not obligation, not martyrdom, but natural overflow. You've seen the light, and now it moves through you. You become a mirror for others, a reminder, a quiet lighthouse for those still lost in the storm. Your very presence begins to shift people, not because you preach, but because you embody. You become someone others feel safe around, someone they open up to without knowing why, someone who reminds them, not with words, but with energy, of who they really are. But here's the paradox. The more your third eye opens, the more you must stay grounded, because there is a shadow that follows awakening, the spiritual ego. It's subtle. It whispers things like, you're ahead of them, you're more enlightened, you've transcended the rules. It dresses itself in wisdom, but at its root, it's just the old ego wearing a new robe. And it can trap you, because the true vision doesn't inflate you, it humbles you. You begin to see how vast the universe really is, how little you actually know, how much grace has carried you, how many lifetimes it has taken to remember what your soul already knew. You see others not as lesser or unawakened, but as reflections, each walking their own sacred path, each at a different chapter in the same infinite book. Humility becomes your protection. Simplicity becomes your strength. You begin to revere the ordinary. A flower, a child's laughter, the pause between heartbeats. You stop needing to be anything other than what you are, a witness to the divine in all forms. And this is when the third eye truly anchors, not as a mystical event, but as a way of being. It's no longer about visions or psychic flashes, it's about clarity. You see clearly, you feel deeply, you live intentionally. You become aware in every moment. And in that awareness, life stops being something you survive and becomes something you sculpt. You co-create. You listen, respond, realign. You learn to trust the unseen more than the seen. You begin to realize that the soul, not the senses, is your primary compass. You move through the world not as someone seeking power, but as someone remembering they already are it. And the third eye? It becomes less of a destination and more of a portal, a doorway you walk through every day, a lens through which you see everything, your pain, your purpose, your past, your potential, not as separate, but as sacred. Because when you live with an open third eye, you don't just see the world, you see through it. You were never meant to forget. Not the light you carry, not the wisdom woven into your bones, not the ancient knowing that pulses just beneath your skin. You were born with eyes that could see the invisible, a mind that could sense what others miss, a heart tuned to vibrations beyond language. But slowly, the world asked you to forget. It taught you how to walk, how to talk, how to conform, but it never taught you how to see. And so, like so many before you, you adapted. You dimmed your light to fit in. You ignored your intuition to avoid rejection. You stopped trusting the voice inside you and traded your inner knowing for outer approval. But now, you're waking up. You're remembering. And, as the third eye opens, that remembrance is not just spiritual, it's cellular. Your very body begins to align with truth. You breathe differently. You speak with more care. You move through the world not as a seeker, but as someone who has found something precious within. This isn't about becoming enlightened. It's about returning to the divine intelligence that has always lived within you, returning to the eternal self that exists beyond the name, the story, the scars. And when you return, everything softens. And fear begins to fade, not because you're invincible, but because you realize you're eternal. You know that nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal needs to be defended. You become the calm in the chaos, the silence in the noise, the clarity in the confusion, and life begins to reflect your inner vision. People show up out of nowhere carrying messages you needed to hear. Opportunities align as if the universe itself is conspiring in your favor. You notice patterns, sacred geometry in conversations, divine timing in delays, purpose in every encounter. Because when your third eye is open, you're not chasing signs, you are the sign. Seeking permission to shine, you realize your very existence is permission. You stop asking who you are and begin embodying it. You are the seer, the rememberer, the living bridge between heaven and earth. And now the choice is yours, to close your eyes and go back to sleep, or to keep seeing, to keep awakening, to keep living as the soul you came here to be. Because the truth is, your third eye didn't open so you could escape this world. It opened so you could heal it, so you could bring vision to blindness, light to the shadows, clarity to the chaos. This is your service, not to preach, but to embody, not to convince, but to radiate. You don't need to be loud to lead, you just need to see clearly. And when you do, those still walking in darkness will find you, not because you told them to, but because your light made the path visible. This is how it spreads, from one awakened soul to another, from one vision to a million, from silence to remembrance. You are not here by chance. You are not watching this by mistake. You are here because something inside you is ready to see, ready to return, ready to remember. The third eye was never closed, it was only waiting. And now, so are you.